Welcome to the Lessons Learned podcast, a podcast reflecting on the lessons we've learned and those we're still in the process of learning. I'm Komal, your host. I'm an interviewer, investor, and someone who has lived a lot of life in a short time. I built this podcast as a place for us to reflect, to be together, and to learn from one another. Let's get into it. Hey fam. Welcome to episode 5 of the Lessons Learned podcast, the Michelle Obama interview recap. I'm smiling so much my face hurts. It is the Wednesday, so you guys are going to listen to this tomorrow, but I'm recording this the day before and I'm still just on a cloud and I cannot believe. I can believe because I put so much hard work into it, but it's one of those things that feels so surreal to look back and say, I had a dream, I worked really hard to make it happen, and then it happened. And it was no small dream. It was interviewing the most admired woman in the world, former First Lady, Michelle Obama. And I am in such deep gratitude, shock, awe, wonder about that day. And it was hugely validating for me. And not in a way where I didn't know the skills I have, the things that I want to do in the world and with my life and with my talent and with the things that make me feel most alive, which is interviewing, conversation, holding space for people, hosting. But it was validating because I got to go through that whole day with such contentment and calm that every part of me was validated in knowing that this is exactly what I am here to do and what I will work hard doing for the rest of my life. Holding space to hear the truth of people's experiences, holding space to allow audiences and people to really get to know the human behind the headlines, the person behind the stories. And I feel fully accomplished in having done that on Friday. The response from you guys has just been incredible. I know that I have new listeners here today who were in the room that day or who streamed online that day. And yes, Mitch was wonderful and shared live. I wasn't expecting the full live to go up, but thank you, my love, for doing that. And the response has been immense. She met me everywhere I went. I loved her candor. I loved her warmth, her grace. She is everything you think she would be. Poised, strong, confident, direct, powerful, loving, human. I don't know what to say. I'm in shock. I'm in awe. And I think this is where I want you guys to hear the first excerpt that I want to share with you guys from the show. I opened sharing about how it was International Day of the Girl Child. And we talked a little bit about the importance of investing in girls. And I followed up with the following question because this is something that I heard her talk about on a previous tour stop. And it was something that she was deeply passionate and moved by. And it was about engaging with children multiple times during her time in the White House and making the White House accessible to young people. Now, let's just hear what she has to say.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things we tried to do was to open up the White House to as many children as possible. And of course, I came from the position of thinking that who I was at that age, when I was usually the kid outside of the gates peering in, to those big magical places. I came from communities where kids could grow up, miles away from the Art Institute, but never feel like they could go inside. Big institutions to certain kids feel like they don't belong to them. And I didn't want the White House to be one of those places. You know, I wanted kids to feel like they belonged in those hallowed halls as much as ambassadors and kings and queens. So we tried to connect everything we did to kids. But one thing I knew about kids is that sometimes they don't believe it when they get to do something special. Sometimes they think it's a one-off, and you can see it in their eyes where they're sort of like, yeah, we're good now, but is this a photo op, or do you really care? And I always felt like, and the first time I realized that was when I was in London. The first interaction I had overseas that led me to start my girls' education initiative was with a wonderful group of girls at the Elizabeth Garrett Anderson School, and I write about that interaction and how it moved me and how I wanted those girls to not see me as the First Lady of the United States, but I wanted to see me as human. I wanted to see me as them, because there was nothing that separated us except for opportunity and hard work. But I also knew that that one interaction wasn't enough. You know, for them to really believe that this famous lady believed in them, I wanted to see them again. So we set up 3 separate interactions. Once we worked with Cambridge University and set up a peer mentoring opportunity for the next time I was there. Then I invited the girls to the White House months later, and it was over the span of time that I think the girls were able to loosen up and understand that I really was them. You know, the shock of meeting Michelle Obama and being in the room sort of wears off if you're with kids again and again and again, and then they can let their guards down and they can be themselves and they can stop seeing you as an icon but seeing you as human. And that's when I found that the interactions got really real. I write about interactions that we had with a group of Native American children. Barack and I visited them at their home, and we sat around the table and they told us tales of woe, and there were tears there because we learned about the trauma that a lot of them had experienced and how the resources in their homeland had been taken away, and how kids were dealing with alcoholism and abuse, and it was a painful time. And we said those kids need to come back to the White House. So they came to the White House, and they spent the day meeting Secret Service agents and all senior advisors, and they got to spend the day, and then Barack and I took them in the motorcade to have pizza in D.C. And we sat and we had pizza in a neighborhood restaurant, and when we came back, the kids had more to do and Barack had work to do, so he went to the Oval Office and we were headed out, and one young girl ran up to us and she hugged Barack and she said, "This day saved my life." And that's the thing that we have to remember, is that every interaction, positive, with a kid makes a difference. We can tear them down or we can build them up. And Barack and I wanted to build and build and build. That's why when I am on a photo line, if there is a child in my presence, I have to take time to look at them in the eye and let them know that this person thinks they're special, because you never know that could save a life. And it often does.
I have to say, as an interviewer and as someone who has seen Michelle speak multiple times, it was something I hope to do to unlock that empathy in her heart and to evoke emotion in her. And it's also, as an interviewer, such a gift when you hear someone say, "That's a great question." So to have those two things happen in the second question that I asked, or like inspired by the second question that I asked, was such a gift and allowed me to like just be so present and dig deep into the rest of the conversation. And also, can we just talk about the passion and the love she has for children? When she talks about that photo line, when she talks about the Indigenous children that she visited, when she talks about the children in London that she engaged with, it's so visceral and palpable, her love for children and her investment in young people. And it felt like such a gift that I got to interview her on International Day of the Girl Child, and that we got to have that specific dialogue. Now, the next question I want to share was one that, and you'll hear this, but it was one that's been on my mind. And it was a question around excellence. Now, The reason I chose the word excellence is when you read Becoming, or when you see her interviews, or when you see how she has stayed committed to her own improvement in the public eye, in her role as First Lady, and now after being out of the White House, when you see how hard she works, I can't help but think of excellence. Adjectives could be ambition, it could be hard work, it could be whatever word you want to put in there. But for me, excellence is the definition of Michelle Obama in my books. And so I wanted to know from her, because I've struggled with this often, is how do I not apologize for my excellence? How do I own that this is a standard that I like to keep? But how do I also accept that I can't be excellent all the time? And so that is what we talked about a little bit later on in the conversation, and that I wanted to share with you here today. So let's listen in.
So, in that compromise, like, you embody excellence. You are the epitome of excellence. Everything about you is excellent. That, like, yes, excellence personified. It's hard to say, yes, exactly. That's what we're all working on, though. But you show us the way of how to embody it. And I feel like you in the book, there was moments where I was like, the excellence you demanded of yourself in your fitness, in your overall taking care of yourself, in motherhood, in the people around you, the caliber that you maintain, the essence of that. And I wonder, because I'm going through this, and when I was thinking of questions here, I was like, I have questions. And we can get in our own way when it comes to our greatness, or our ambition, or our excellence. How did you step out of your own way and start really leaning into it?
And you assume that I did.
I know. I wrote this question and my husband was like, you're assuming that she, and I was like, but maybe.
No. I mean, well, some of it is just maturity and age, right? I mean, I'm older than you. I'm an old lady. Yeah, I know. Okay, not an old lady, but I'm older. And, you learn more about yourself. You can... and that's why it's so important to take time to reflect on the why you do what you do. What's driving you? And, you can see in my book that I've done work throughout my life to figure that out. It's like, well, why am I such a little driver? Because I was that little person from very early on. So some of it, I think, is temperament, because kids, as anybody who has more than one kid here in the audience knows that you have nothing to do with them. They show up on this planet with their little beings, and you think you can mold them, and then they're like, nope, I don't. You try one thing on one kid, and then the next kid comes along, you do the same thing, and that kid is like, nope, I don't respond to that. So I do believe in temperament. But I believe in my environment. I'm sure for me, it was realizing that I was probably trying to I was trying to show up for my parents in a way that made them proud, because I understood the sacrifices that they made very early on, not because they put it in our faces, but I had eyes to see. I saw my father get up every day and struggle with an illness that slowly took his ability to walk away, but never complain. So when you grow up with a father with a disability who is working every day to pay the rent, to pay the bills, and to send you to college, and he is not thinking about his joy and his happiness, he is getting up every day being excellent. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like excellence. We see it as somebody on TV, somebody with money, somebody with prestige. I saw excellence every day in my working class father who got up and was a decent man, treated others with respect, who worked hard. He embodied excellence. We just don't celebrate that. So, I look around and I was surrounded by excellence. It was working class excellence, but it was excellence nonetheless. My, great aunt, who was the taskmaster, my first taskmaster in my life, who was my piano teacher, who I wrote about, she demanded excellence. And I saw it bear out in the way people showed up for her. All her young students wanted to make her proud, and I became one of those people. And you carry that with you, right? But then you grow up and you realize that excellence isn't just driving and doing. It's not just about the A. In fact, it often isn't about the A, you know? Because grades are arbitrary. Schools, how you get in, who gets into what college, arbitrary, as we're learning, you know. Fast. We are learning fast. Opportunity, access, all of that. So you see that, and you realize that, you know, sometimes you have to push harder if you want to get to the same place. If you're a woman, if you're a minority, you realize life is not fair. It is not equal. It is not even. And so you respond to that, but you realize that it's really how you choose to show up in the world. And that's what I came to understand, that I had to broaden my definition of excellence, and take my foot off the brake sometimes to be excellent, because going back to what I first said, you can't have it all. You can't be excellent in everything at the same time, and that's okay. So that's why when I started having my kids and my husband was traveling and he was in office, I had to pull back from my career. I was driving fast, but I realized that if I want to be an excellent mother, given our circumstances, I have to make some changes in the short term. You know, you have to prioritize that excellence and realize that there are chapters in your life where you can have excellence at certain times. You know, I don't always get up and work out every single day, because, you know, I could sprint a hit now that I'm 55. I'm now more tired, so I have to change what excellence means with regard to fitness, you know. So as you grow, you evolve, and, you know, this is my advice to you, I take it in, is that you got to give yourself a break too, and you have to figure out who you are now. And how you're the best person you are now. You can't drive for the future all the time. And you're gonna make mistakes. That's the other big thing I had to sort of be okay with, was stumbling around a lot, you know? Because you don't grow without making some of those mistakes. That's the only way you learn. So I am here now with more insight because I'm 55 and I've tried some things out, and they worked or not worked. That's the wisdom I want women to tap into. Men too, but women, because a lot of times we get this age and all of a sudden society stops seeing us. You know, mature women, we become invisible. Mature men become wise, ironically. Mature women, we start becoming invisible because we often live in societies that value youth and appearance solely. But I am my wisest now, in my 50s, and I can't wait to see what my 60s will hold.
Can we just talk about how I got personal advice from Michelle Obama? And I think what she shared about, you know, how as we age and become more mature, that confidence grows was so important to hear, because when I think of the people I look up to most, they're 20, 30 years older than me. And I think we can often forget where we are in our careers and how much time it takes to build an important, viable career that we are insanely proud of. And to build up that confidence, to feel like we truly know who we are and that we are so rooted in who and what we are. I will say that was a point where I got a little bit like, wow, like butterflies in my stomach when she was looking directly at me and holding my hand. Like I was not okay in that moment, and just really there for me in front of 8,000 people, offering her words of wisdom directly to me. And that was something I will cherish for forever. I can't believe that happened. You guys, this is insane. Can we just talk about how it's the episode 5 of the podcast and I'm slicing in audio from the interview I did with Michelle Obama, which also, like, I don't even know if I'm fully allowed to be doing this, but we're going to do it. And if they ask me to take it down, I absolutely will. But I had to make an attempt to share part of the day with you guys. But as I'm sitting here trying to be all chill and cool and, let's talk about the Michelle Obama interview. No, I'm losing my mind that this happened and that I have this opportunity to recap it with you guys. So like, let's all just not be cool together, because I am not cool right now. I have no chill. I am just so like full and happy and joyful. And I will also say this, guys. There were some things that happened personally in my business around last Friday that really sucked. Like, that I will save for another time, that showed me my capacity to be stoic, that showed me my capacity to still perform and show up and be present and enjoy that day so fully in spite of the hard things that were happening in my life. And I just wanted to share that because oftentimes, this was an incredibly powerful high moment for me. But at the same time, it was complicated. And I think that that's true of so much of our lives and so much of how we live, of the high highs and the low lows. I've been through this roller coaster before, diagnosed with cancer, premiering the film at the White House, all of these things. Like, life is always going to happen all at once. And we're going to wish, I said this to Mitch afterwards. I was like, I wish that I could have just had that day be excellent without this other stuff going on. And that's just not how it goes down all the time. But we can choose to be present in the moments that matter, and we can choose to enjoy the moments that matter alongside knowing that hard things are happening. And I think that that's a perfect transition into this next period of what we talked about on stage. And I can feel myself getting emotional right now, but I've experienced a lot of grief in my life. I've lost people I love dearly, very early in my life. My mom's sister passed away when I was 17. It was really tragic for our family. My uncle passed away when I was 19. He was like my second dad. We grew up in the same home together, conjoined family, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, all of us under the same roof. And since then, lost multiple others, grandparents, friends. And grief is something that has informed a lot of how I live my life and how I lead, because it forces a level of empathy and understanding that nothing else possibly could. And I just knew when she shared in her book about losing her best friend Suzanne to cancer and losing her father to multiple sclerosis, that was something I really wanted to hear from her on, to see how those losses impacted her. And wow, what she shared was just so powerful.
Because you realize life is short. Nothing is forever, and death can teach you that. But we have to experience the loss and let it come in, right? That's what I learned. It's like I have to celebrate the lives, the life that they brought. And I fortunately had a mother that let us do that, that could spend time reminiscing about all the good that my father was. But you gotta let that in to get through it. And then it's time, it's really time. I mean, I can barely talk about it today.
Thank you for sharing.
So it stays with you. But for me, it's continuing to uphold a life that would make the people that I lost feel proud. And that's what keeps me going.
Continuing to uphold a life that would make the people I lost feel proud. Wow. When she shared that story, as many of you know, I am a cancer survivor, and I shared that obviously in this clip. But the year I was diagnosed, a friend of mine from university was also diagnosed with skin cancer. And earlier this year, Heather passed away, and I am here. And so hearing her talk about that piece of why me, like I am here and they are not, that is something that really, it is something that motivates me often when I think of the things that I've gone through and the people I've lost. And I ask myself, why am I here? What am I here to do? And so often it's on behalf of the people who have gone before in my life. And so when she shared that, I sent Heather a lot of love wherever she is. And just a lot of what I do is in one way or another in the memory of all these people. Anyways, getting emotional again over here. But that was a really important question that I just needed to hear about, needed to know about. And she went there, and I so appreciated that. And the audience appreciated that. Lest we forget, there was 8,000 people there, and it felt like we were in a living room just chatting, and we had these people listening in, but the candor, the grace, the connection, it was remarkable. And it's something that I am very proud to have been able to facilitate space for that to be the intimacy and level of connection that we were able to have on stage. So we're going to go into two more of the questions that we spoke about on stage. And this next one is one that also I knew we had to talk about. And one that in a predominantly white room here in Ottawa, I thought would be very powerful to hear her speak about, and it was race. And this is how that conversation went.
I was rereading a section of the book last night, and you talked about the power of being the first Black family in a home made by slaves, built by slaves. And you shared, you shared that there was a point where you felt viscerally that your existence there was a provocation. A provocation. And that language, when I read it, it just it took my breath away. Because here you have millions, tens of millions who are rooting you on, cheering you on, so amped that you're there, seeing what's happening historically. And then you have people who detest it. And I don't know how else to ask this, but to say, how do you reconcile that racism?
Yeah. Well, I talk in the book about one of the things that my parents taught me was context. You know, knowing the context of the people in your world, what makes them tick, what makes them angry. It helps with empathy, right? Because in order to empathize, you have to sort of look at that racist person, and what I do is say, how did you get here? Because your feelings have nothing to do with me, because I know who I am. I know I'm hardworking, I'm a good American, I followed the rules, I did everything that you said I couldn't do, and I did it in spades.
Exceptionally well.
And you're still mad? Well, you're still afraid? And it's like, well, that's not me, that's you. So I have to think, what happened to you? And in America, we have a history, and it is slavery. And there are people, it's like we forget how recently this was. I mean, you know, the Civil Rights Act was passed, like, around the time I was born, right? I mean, my grandparents, and I write about this, they are the products of slavery. So I have to think to myself, well, if my grandparents experienced that, well, there were people who were raised to believe and to fear people because of the color of their skin. That's what they were taught. That's what kept them alive. That was the food that they ate. That's what they drank. That's what they knew. That's what they thought. That's all they knew. And so those people are still alive too. And wow, imagine, you've been taught to fear people like me. And here I am, walking into your White House. Oh. I mean, and I don't mean that as a joke, but that must terrify you. And so that's what you're dealing with, the unknown, the thing you never knew, because you never knew me. You never knew me. You only knew what you were told about me. And so I can't change that for you, but I can live my truth. I can wake up every day and be as excellent as I can be, and I can't do that for you. I have to do it for me and all those who will come. So we just have to continue to write a bigger, broader, better history, because you can't talk people out of how they were raised. Just as much as, the values that I hold dear, which are different values. They aren't segregation. They aren't pitting people against one another. They're unifying, because I've seen more. I know how arbitrary it is. I know that race doesn't define anything. It's a biological trait. It's like eye color. It's like the way my hair is shaped and curled. It's not a statement. It's my genetics. It's like me being mad at y'all because you're short, or, most people are shorter than me. I'm not mad at you. That's just like, that's how you were born. It's not better or worse. It just is. It's biology. We can't kill each other over that, because it never ends. So that helps me. Understanding my tormentor, putting that person in context, and then trying to have some empathy for how afraid you must be, because maybe you fear that because we were done so wrong, maybe you think that that's what we're going to do when we get in charge. There are people when I grew up who ran out from my neighborhood in droves because my family moved in. Marion and Fraser, those two people you read about, those people who went to work every day and tried hard, mowed their lawns and taught kids, and people fled. That was known as white flight, that as African Americans in the 70s started to improve their lots and wanted to move into nicer neighborhoods with better schools that were more integrated. What happened was that the white families that were there sold their homes and went further out, running away from us. And that isn't history. That's happening now. If you think about immigration and how we feel about others coming in and who they are, well, most of the time they're Marion and Fraser and Michelle Robinson. Those are the people you're afraid of. Yeah, there are some people who do bad things, but they look like all different kinds of people. Goodness knows no race. It knows no income. I know a whole lot of, sorry, wealthy white men who are doing bad things out in the world. That's when I say going high. Going high doesn't mean you ignore the pain. You don't acknowledge the pain. Going high means that you don't react with your visceral, guttural, short-term response, which never helps. Going low is selfish. Going low is not long-term. It is like road rage. You do it and then you're like, that was stupid, right? And going high is about the long term. It's not saying that the hurt didn't happen, but it's like if you're trying to get to a solution, you don't do what's the easiest and quickest solution. You have to think, my words matter, and what I say could do damage in a way that I don't even intend. So let me think about this. Let me think about what we're trying to get to. And if we're trying to get to unity, if we're trying to get to kindness and openness, then I can't respond in that guttural, visceral, low way. And especially if you're in the White House, if you're the commander-in-chief, if you're married to that person, you have a responsibility to go high and to think broad and to think strategically at all times, because every word you utter can change the face of lives. That's what I mean by going high. But it doesn't mean you ignore the pain. It doesn't mean you overlook the hurt, because a lot of kids like us who go through it, we have to talk about it. Because if we don't want it to break us, the slights that we feel every day, the side looks, the glances, the judgment, the low bars that are set for us, it's like we have to call it out. We have to label it and point it out, and to be reminded that it isn't us. It's oftentimes them. That's how we survive it. And I don't want any kid thinking that going high means you just suck it up. And I don't want any perpetrators to think that the words that they utter don't do damage. People have to own what they say. And if we continue to ignore it, then they never own it. That's why I talk about it. That's why I talk about it plain and clear and simple. Because I'm Michelle Obama now, right? People love me, I guess. But before they knew me, I was that scary black woman, you know, that was emasculating her husband. That was, you know, no, these were the things that were said. I made it a point when I wrote the book to pull out every negative article and read it. Because when I went through it, I was like, I can't take that in. Because first of all, that's not America. That's not how most people think and feel. That I know, and that's something to remember. Most people, the vast majority of humans on this planet are not that, right? So I didn't want to just feed on that. But I wanted young girls and young kids who admire me now to see the storm I had to go through, to know that we all go through it. People of color, people who are otherized, that we go through it and that we can get beyond it. But if I never took the time to stop and lay that out, if I tried to paint my memoir as this wonderful ascent to now, then what would these kids do when they confronted the same things I confronted? They would think, well, this never happened to Michelle Obama. Well, yes, as a matter of fact, it did. And it continues.
And that's why I wanted to bring it up. Because I think, like, we can all be here for a feel-good afternoon and all of these pieces, which is so important, but at the same time, like, this was your lived experience, and you, more than anyone I could ask that question to, can give us the kind of advice and thoughts you just did. Now, I'm so sad, because this is my last question of the afternoon. I know! More time! But it is Canadian Thanksgiving, and it is a...
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. And I would love to know, at this point in your life, what are you most thankful for?
Oh, wow. So much. I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful because, as I said, that's the thing that isn't guaranteed. And I for one, know that. I am grateful every day that I get up and I can breathe in air and move my legs. And I'm grateful, absolutely, for my family. I mean, my two little girls who go home tonight, they're both home from college for the weekend. I'm gonna see them, lay eyes on them. And I am grateful that they made it through those 8 years in one piece. And I am grateful for all the millions of people around the world who prayed for us and our safety every single day. We are standing upright because of the support we had. And that's what I want us to take away. It's like, oh, there's so much goodness in the world. You know, Malia, one of her wise young moments, we were at the White House. It was 4th of July, massive celebration on the South Lawn, all throughout the Smithsonian. Millions and millions of people descend to watch the fireworks. And we have had a wonderful vantage point from the Truman balcony. You could see the Washington Monument, and so we would watch the festivities. And at the end of the evening, our guests had left. They were cleaning up. We were sitting on the balcony, and all the people that had gathered were starting to disperse. And she said, "Mom, can you believe that many people came together and there wasn't any problems? There weren't any problems?" And I said, you know, that's a really smart thing to remember, because we lose sight of the fact that every day people are waking up doing the right thing. They are like my parents. They're getting up, they're going to work, they're following the rules, they're driving in the right lane. They're just trying to make it. But sometimes all that we're shown is the noise. All we're shown are the problems. But I have traveled the world, and people are waking up every day doing the right thing, trying to live with a level of kindness and goodness, trying to live by the values that they were raised in, because we were all raised with those values. The reason people connect to that little girl, Michelle Robinson, that I write about in my book, is because we were all her. Man, male, female, I don't care where you were, we were raised around a dinner table with hardworking parents. trying to make sure that they did better by us. And we carry that with us. Yeah, there are some people who get off the way. There are some people who harbor fears for whatever reasons. But their fears are even understandable in their context. We just have to be more vulnerable to each other. Because what I did by sharing my story did the opposite of what most people think. It's like, don't tell people about yourself. Just keep it all in, because maybe they'll judge you. They won't like you. Well, here's the thing. When you are vulnerable enough to open yourself up, wow, people are more likely to do that themselves. And then we see each other. Now we're not just objects. We're not just colors. We're not just hair texture or hijabs. Or we are real people with stories and insight. And as I say in the book, it's harder to hate up close. So we have to let each other in. And take the risk that sometimes we might get hurt and disappointed, but more often than not, we will be rewarded. People will open up. So that's what I am grateful for on this Thanksgiving, and I hope you all do that, is know your story, share it, open up. Don't be afraid of the judgment. Just be ready to welcome the acceptance that will come, and we will do better as a world if we can do that a little bit more.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say, this has been a dream of mine for 10 months.
You did a great job.
You told me it was destined last December, and here we are.
Here we are.
So thank
proud of you.
Michelle Obama.
Thank you, guys.
Wow. I'm rewatching that section so that I can be in that moment and share with you, but wow. Her dialogue around race and going high, what that actually means, allowing ourselves to still feel the pain, to still be in our lived realities, to understand context around the people who are the perpetrators, who do perpetuate that racism, and then moving into dialogue around the visceral way that she was with us that day and how honest she was. Like, you could hear it in her voice when she talked about those articles and the caricature that she was turned into, and the way that the media portrayed her, and how much work and effort was put into changing that narrative. And she sees that, she knows that, she acknowledges that, she owns that. And I think that's so powerful to show to young people, or people young and old, who are people of color, or people who might just need that perspective and to just know that. And she went there with us. And then the thankfulness conversation. Hearing that again, and where she ended around story, and why our stories matter and why they are important, and how if we had the courage to share our stories more and be more vulnerable and put them out there, that we can all be changed. Like, that is the thesis of why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I started this show, why working so hard to get on that stage was so important to me, because I love being a bridge. I love being a person who can talk to people of all political stripes and colors, backgrounds, lived experiences, beliefs, and have conversation and dialogue and see the humanity in one another. And at the end there, when I share, 10 months ago, you told me this was destiny. She grabbed my hands in Denver last December and she said, "This is destiny. We're going to make this happen." And backstage beforehand, I told her, and I got to work, and here we are. But to hear her say, "I'm proud of you, and you did an excellent job." And when we walked off stage, or in that moment, when we hugged before getting off stage, she said, "Wow, I could have gone on forever. That was wonderful." And I said, "This is what I meant to do with my life." And then she held my hand, and we shared that moment with the audience, and we walked off stage, hands wrapped around each other's waists. And as we descended the stage, she said, "I'm still processing so much of what we talked about. Wow." And her staff, the looks on their faces backstage, her chief of staff, Melissa, just saying that was excellent. Roger from their team saying, wow, like that was phenomenal. The Secret Service also like making comments and sharing and smiling and saying, great job. I could just feel that that was a different kind of dialogue than maybe what has been had on the tour. And being backstage with Kenya, one of my dearest friends and documentary photographer, she was there with me backstage, and she just stopped me and said, you need to soak this in. You were incredible. And I'm just in awe of that, this whole experience. I'm obviously still processing it. I'm obviously in a lot of feelings about it, but this also is a bit of a catharsis for me to share it all with you guys. When she met my mom backstage at the meet and greet, my mom told me this later, and Mitch took a video, and I'm just bawling in that video. And she hugged my mom and said, you have an amazing daughter. She's on the rise. You should be so proud. And I remember prior to that, I had left my book on stage and I went back out to grab it, and I saw Mitch and my parents, and I shouted at them, got their attention, and they came to the edge of the stage, and just looking at my mom and dad's faces, there's literally nothing more I could want in life as their daughter than that moment, to see the look on their face. And when she talked about excellence and that it's everyday people and their excellence, it made me think of my dad and my mom and everything they put in to give me this life. And I'm so proud and grateful that I was able to create an opportunity like this, where they could see their daughter in her fullness, in her full light, and where they can also feel proud of the life that they made and created for me. Whew. Okay, we're gonna rein this in now. Wow. She ended on the note of thankfulness, and I want to do the same. I'm so thankful for all of you, for the love and grace you've shown me this last week. I want to end on a little snippet of something that I said to her on stage after she shared about creating space for others and how the seats we fill, we're not meant to hold on to. We're meant to create space for others at the table and for us to move on so more seats can exist at the table. And when she finished sharing that, I've reflected this back to her.
I think that's why you're so well loved, because your entire essence creates space for others. It is just literally imbued in all that you are, and it's such a gift to all of us. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're so sweet.
And so I want to end on this note. I want to say, I'm so grateful to those who make space for others, who have made space for me. And when I talk about this being a win for all of us, and this isn't a me, it's a we moment, I deeply mean that. I hope through seeing this happen and seeing this become manifest, space has been created for you to think of your greatest dreams and the things that you want to do in your life and achieve and be. And I hope that you can fill that space. And you can now see it's possible. You can do this. Let's continue to create space for one another. Let's continue to hold space for each other's stories. And let's continue to lead and live with empathy. I love you guys so much. Next week, I'll be interviewing the incredible Nitika Chopra from Chronicon. I'll be speaking there at the end of the month in New York, so I just wanted to highlight her story. So stay tuned for episode 6, landing next week, next Thursday in your inbox. Thank you guys so much. I didn't realize I was going to get this emotional recording this episode, but here we are. I hope you loved it. And if you did, please rate, subscribe. Please also leave a review. It would mean the world to me to hear your thoughts, not only on this episode, but the season so far. I love you guys. Thank you for everything. Until next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you want to follow me, Komal, check me out on Instagram at KOMALMINHAS or the show at Lessons Learned Podcast _. And if you have an idea of a lesson that we should dive into on the show, then slide into our DMs and submit there or on the website, along with any guests you think I should interview and talk all of the things with. As always, I hope that you make some time for you this week and reflect on the lessons you're learning or have learned, and take some time to celebrate all the incredible that is you. Until next time, guys. Bye!